Herman Edwards here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Coach?
I am well. Participating in practice a little later on this afternoon and getting ready to play a game next week, believe it or not. College football season upon us. There's a lot of exciting fans all over the country, obviously, and we're excited here as well.
And what about you, being back with a whistle and a headset and men to coach? Coach.
Rich, I'm back in my element, and I really missed it. I miss the camaraderie. I miss just developing young men, and this is what I do. This is what I've always done. I've always been a football coach, especially when I retired from playing all those years. And being back is where I belong. I feel very, very comfortable in this environment. Got a pretty good football team too. We're thin in some areas, but I think we have some experience, especially on offense. Got some talented players there, and we've acquired some as well. We probably have 15 new players that weren't here in the spring that actually will help us try to win football games this year. So it's been a good return for me, and all the sense of being back on the grass and being around the coaching staff and young football players.
Now, I've been around a bunch of coaches who have gone into TV work and media work. I sit next to one in Mariucci, and every single time we go to a game and we're covering a game, and Mooch gets on the sidelines, he puts his hands on his hips, he starts talking to the refs, he starts talking to the players and the coaches, and we all have some fun just saying it's always in him. It's always in a coach. Why is that? Why can't coaches get coaching out of their blood, Coach?
It's your DNA. It's just what you've done your whole life. I've been fortunate, Rich, being a high school athlete, and then from there going into the college level and being a pretty good college athlete, and then from there I have an opportunity to play in the National Football League and coach in the National Football League for 30 years. So my life has always been around football in that aspect of it, and I was fortunate enough to work on television for a while, but still coaching football, to be quite honest, and maybe learning more about football when you step back from it. And you mentioned Coach Mooch. I mean, we're good friends. We go way back. We coached that Under Armour All-American game for the last 6-7 years together. He was on one side, I was on the other.
That's right. And
we had a blast coaching those kids. So it's in your DNA, and it's a way for me to repay football. I am an ambassador for the game of football. I mean, football has been my whole life. Anything I can give back to it, I'm indebted to this game. And I think when you've done it and played it and coached it as long as I have, you have a lot of information you can give back to football and try to make the game better.
Herman Edwards, Arizona State head coach here on the Rich Eisen Show. What about, though, reaching 17, 18, 19-year-old kids? Herm, what's the challenge there?
Well, it is in a sense, but not really. I think they all want the same thing that all players want. How can you make them better? I think today's athletes are a little bit different. You got to tell them why first. You got to tell them why. Well, why you do things. In the era that we grew up in, it was what, the how, and then the why. Now you got to tell them why. They still learn, but their learning mechanism is a little bit different. They're so in tuned to things that happen really fast. That's that new generation of kids. But they still want to learn. I think how you coach in the classroom is a little bit different than how you coached it 20 years ago. But still, the fundamentals. The ability to coach on the grass in the classroom stay the same. How can you develop a player? You can't give him talent. God gives him talent. How can you develop his skills to make him successful? And every player wants that.
Well, a couple of years ago, Dabo Swinney took Clemson to Syracuse and pointed out the Jim Brown banner, and a lot of kids didn't even know who Jim Brown was. Have you had a moment like that with these kids?
Oh, yeah. And, what I've done is actually gone back to the history of this place and talked about the players that have been here before. And I think I did that in professional era in football as well. A lot of these young guys don't know. They don't know the shoulders they're standing on. There was always someone else before you. Sometimes they forget about that. And I think if you let them learn a little bit of the history of the game they're playing, and when they leave it, I've always told players this, and coaches as well, we got to make it better for the guys to follow us. That's critical because this is a great, great game.
Well, and if you ever want to teach the kids a never give up mentality, never give up on a play, never give up on a game, never give up on a moment, all you got to do is just put on the film of somebody in the Meadowlands back in the 70s, right, Coach?
Well,
what do you plan on doing that?
Say that? Yeah, it'd be funny you say that, Rich, because after every Friday practice, and in professional football, it was Saturday. You have that walkthrough.
Mm-hmm.
You line up the victory formation, and because you want them to see that, right? And I can remember in pro football, I said, why do people do this to the rookies, right? And the rookies look at Coach, because they just do it. I said, well, Google it, why this happens, right? Come back to night meeting, they go, Coach, you're the guy that picked up the ball. I said, yeah, it was me. So I have a lot of fun with that one, right?
You told your kids to Google it? Is it what you told them?
Oh, my goodness. In pro football. I was a pro coach. Like, Coach, what? People get in this formation all the time. I said, yeah, but how did this thing come about? How did this victory thing come about, right? And they're kind of looking at me with these, big eyes. And I said, just Google 1978, Meadowlands, whatever. They go back and they say, Coach, that was you. Well, yeah, that was me. Oh, there you go.
Man, that is amazing, Herm. That is just amazing. So you still talking about learning. What have you learned so far as you're getting ready for your first game, UTSA, and then Michigan State in a home game for you? I mean, that's huge here.
College football, I learned this, 20 timeouts, Rich. 20 timeouts in a college football game.
That's nuts.
They last forever. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
And the spread offense, obviously. I mean, that's college football now. Everybody throws it a bunch, and you're talking about 75, 80 plays in a football game. But some things don't change. I mean, you still have to be disciplined in what you do. I still think in football, two things come to mind, especially offensively. To score points, you got to be able to throw it. To win games, you got to run. Defensively, I think if you're sound tackling in college football, I think you got to be really, really good in the red zone because people move the ball. They just do. Because the way they spread you out, there's a lot of screen short passes that get guys in space. You got to tackle well. So I think all those things become a big factor in football. And here's something, Rich, that really is new for me because you guys haven't been on this field. But in college football, the dimensions of the field are different. In the fact of the hashes. They're 12 yards. So all of a sudden you're on one hash. Let's say you're on the left hash. There's a lot of field over here on the other side. Pro football, ball's always in the middle. In college football, there's a field side, and there's a boundary side. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. A couple more minutes left with Herman Edwards here, Arizona State head coach. So you're there in Arizona State. You got Sumlin in Arizona, Chip Kelly now in UCLA. I mean, you are a Cal guy going way back in the day. Yeah. So you're, despite having worked at ESPN as I did and heard all that talk of East Coast bias, you are well versed on football west of the Rockies. So my question for you is, where do you think the Pac-12 ranks, Coach?
Well, I think this. Look at last year, just in the draft alone, 30-plus guys, almost 35 guys got drafted. We know the SEC is going to average about 50. But I think this, and then you know this, due to the fact that a lot of the games are at night, you don't see the talent here. This is a talented conference of players. Look, 2 quarterbacks were drafted in the first round out of this conference. I mean, there's a lot of players that come out of this conference, this West Coast thing. So I'm a big believer in it. I grew up on the West Coast, as you mentioned. I went to Cal when it was the Pac-8. All right, and how about that? I mean, playing against Sully Six Killer and guys like that, and Bobby Moore, Ahmad Rashad, all those guys were in this big conference. Former Chuck Muncie was a teammate of mine, Steve Burkowski, Wesley Walker, Vince Ferragamo. I mean, I played with those guys at Cal, so this is a rich conference of players.
And then, how do you, just one last one for you, Herm, respond to somebody who hears this and understands what you've been and done, that it's now the 21st century, and Herman Edwards might not be equipped to do that? How do you respond to that? Getting ready for this.
Well, I think, and you know this too, and I think we live our lives this way, that the perception of others has never been my reality. I won't allow it to be. I mean, when you take on something like this, it's what I do. To be quite honest, I've always been a coach at heart, and there's nothing changed for me. It's you walk on the field and you get the whistle and you go and you coach. And the good thing about it, I got a great staff and I can relate to the players. There's no problem there, and asking the players to play for me. So that's the good part. And I coach the players. I don't try to coach anybody outside of the players.
Mm-hmm. And have you told the kids what they play to the game for?
Well, they understand that. I got a feeling they heard that one, too. They knew exactly about that one.
They knew that before you walked in the door on that one, right?
They knew that one. Coach, we get it. I said, okay, as long as we get it, we're okay.
That's right. You had them at hello, in a way.
Yeah, hello was the jingle. Never forget the jingle. That's right.
Hey, Coach, I'm really excited to watch Arizona State football this week, this fall, and to see what's going down with you. You've always been one of my favorites, so I wanted to check in with you.
I appreciate you, brother. And kiss them little ones, man.
I will do
hug them enough.
I will do.
Enough.
I know that.
Okay.
Right back at you. That's Herman Edwards, at Herm Edwards on Twitter, Arizona State head coach here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.